camera, they can look at all the cracks and things, or maintenance pieces on those windmills. So that's an area where the application piece is that we're developing at the elementary, middle school, and high school, so they get to high school, they've got those skills, and we're trying, it's an expectation of, we're going to the next level, to where they can go into that career focus, similar like drones, to robotics, to, like you have Cooper Tire in Texas Cannon, you have some of the paper mills, you have some of the manufacturing, they're building the robotic arms to help produce a lot of the goods and services that we have across the country. And so we're trying to make that more of an application piece to where we're developing, we're think tanking, to where we're trying to be entrepreneurs, to where we can develop those type of skills where they can go and fit in well within our society that we have for them. So yeah, it's an expectation. It's more than just hey, let's go and have pizza and let's see if we can tinker around with some toys. Let's actually have some application pieces.
It is fun, it can be fun,
Right.
but it's fun with a purpose, and you have to recognize what that is early on. So, Mr. Aarons, when you've been doing this for quite some time, what are some of the things that are basically fundamental? And if any of us here in the audience wanted to make sure that we did so, what kinds of things do we need to have in order to start this process?
From the school or just from student base or what?
From the school perspective, to give that experience to the students so that they can achieve the vision that Mr. Bailey's talking about.
From the school basis, it helps to kind of have a curriculum in place, or at least have some semblance of a curriculum. You need to be able to have students sit down and understand, like, we have an engineering design process class. That establishes critical thinking, that establishes logical processes. You need to be able to take these pieces, integrate them, and then put them in some practical application. Robotics is perfect for that. From a student standpoint, we're looking for students that are open-minded. If you love technology, that's great. If you don't, that's fine, because we have students that do come to us and they're just kind of lukewarm about it, but they're really good at figuring things out. So we put them kind of on what we call, I guess, on the back end of the process, where they're figuring out, okay, how's the code work? Is there a particular piece of this of the robot that nobody else has figured out? We'll put them on that because they're looking at this and they're visualizing this. So being open-minded, critical thinking is great. I guess the biggest thing that I look for is, are you a team player? Are you going to go in there? Are you going to work with the team? Because if you just want to work by yourself, you want to pull to your side, it's not going to work well. So from the curriculum standpoint, you need to have things in place that help establish things like robotics and STEM. And from the student standpoint, you have to have students that are open-minded, that are willing to work with each other, and just developing critical thinking skills.
Now, this is, you talk about robotics. I'm sure mostly everybody in here thinks that there's an expense, that goes into, you have to make an investment. But yet, it doesn't necessarily have to be a ginormous expense, because we have here First Day at St. James. You guys have been doing such wonderful things on a shoestring budget. Ms. Kirkland, can you say, what can you do on a shoestring budget? And do those kinds of things matter to the kids?
Absolutely. Just like if you're getting your driver's license when you're 14, you're working on your learner's permit. If you saw our drones in the back and you saw the little bitty ones that are about $10, the kids call them Walmart drones, and it's okay. We can get those at Walmart because I know they have their $700 ones at home, but we're not going to fly those because I would rather you crash a $10 drone than a $100 drone. So I'm working that with. It's a learner's permit. The students that are in there right now are going to be the teachers. I'm not going to be teaching after this session. They're going to be teaching other students. And they'll tell you right away, we want them to start on the robots. Sorry if there's any Target people in here. They have them there too, okay? And then we progress up. If you land it successfully 5 out of 10 times, hopefully 10 out of 10, then you get to progress to the next level. So you don't just jump in. If you want to bring your own to school, you can do that. But on the ones that I've working in hustling, it's not every day I'm hustling, but to get the $10 drums. On the NXT, you saw that we just have bricks for our EV3s. The NXT parts work with the EV3. All you do is find a school that doesn't want to use their NXT anymore because it's old school stuff. Same parts, same beam, same structure, same everything, eBay, whatever, and just purchase the brick. I can tell you that we don't have a lot of computers, and normally with the NXT, with those bricks, you have to have a computer program. But if you go ahead and jump into that EV3, you not only can program it with an iPad, you can go and use LabVIEW, you can use C++, you can use Python. It programs in 9 languages, all the way up to data logging, high school, and some in college. So we're just starting shoestring. It is a shoestring. But once we get our buy-in, it'll come. It certainly will. Just start simple and small.
Well,
And shop, Goodwill and stuff like that. It's not good stuff.
what has always interested me is that with robotics, you really have a cross-curricular approach. And Ms. Brown, Mr. Bailey, I'd like your touch on this. If you had your way, the kids that are actually engaged in this, they really are learning a lot of other concepts that apply to this classroom. Can you share with us a little bit about your thinking on that? And have you seen any evidence that the kids end up doing better in their algebra or their language arts, even if they're writing, by participating in these kinds of programs? And that's the kind of things that us in the audience want to make sure that it is not just a fun thing, that there's practical application.
Well, and you're exactly right. It is helping you with your math, your geometry. You can help calculus. You have all the different advanced maths. It's going to help see the real world application piece of work. You're using those skills to help design and calculate, and then it helps you with it carries over into the classroom to where you're more successful as well, and you're more of a more stronger student in the classroom for that. And then it helps you to where, hey, I may not have been a stronger student in this one area, but by being part of robotics, I've learned these type of skills that's helped me to grow. And this is where I feel where I may want to go into more. Like Mr. Aaron's was talking about with some of the students to be how you become one of those in the club, or I said the club, into the robotics piece was, I may not be a great programmer, I may not be a great coder. But when you get into this, that may be something that you start off having no interest at all to some degree, but then being around the group, being around, learning from each other, talking to each other in the group, is one of your strengths then. You turn into that program to where you grew into that. So I think it's absolutely, it's a very beneficial piece to help you be a more well-rounded student.
Ms. Brown, care to elaborate on your perspective from the K-6 group?
Well, we are a liberal arts school that our robotics, our computer program was started by our music teacher. Really? And that sounds really strange, but now back in the 80s, she actually started our computer system. And it's funny how much that counting, those kind of things go into all the kinds of things of programming. We're fortunate that we're our smaller staff, so Shanna has the ability to talk to our teachers. And for example, she was doing inventions with our kids. And she was able to talk to our art teacher and bring some art things that were going into angles and those kind of types of things that she was bringing into, and like Mr. Bailey said, sometimes kids are not overly interested in maybe the robotics things, but there's a place for them in this. And with the coding, learning angles, people are visual. We all have different type of learners, so being able to see that. I was terrible in geometry, and when we started doing this and seeing this, oh, that's what a right angle really looks like. For a kid to actually be able to see that and then make that happen, it does translate older. It was funny I don't know if any of you heard this, but on NPR yesterday, they were talking about programming. And in Brazil, they were talking about how this man is actually going in and doing programming classes with kids and adults there, because their government is so corrupt that they need to hack into the government systems. And so they said, you either learn programming or you be programmed. And so they're teaching that at a very young age so that the people can start taking over over their government, and they're doing it in Python, something that we're teaching. We teach other foreign languages, we teach Latin and Spanish. We look at programming as another language, and there's how many languages of programming out there. And Shannon's been able to start with our kindergartners with simple drop and switch, but they're seeing what it does, and now they're going on and on. We've done logo since the 80s. And again, it seems like a very simple programming language, but teaching that, we've seen our math skills get better. We've seen those type of things that are all the way through. And there's a place for every child, even if you don't like robotics. If you're creative, you can make all of that fit.
And really, you have the robotics piece, you have the programming piece, you have the drones, we haven't even mentioned the 3D printing, so there's a whole lot that can go into this new world of technology. I have another line of questioning, but before I go through that, I'd like to ask, does anybody have any questions so far for our esteemed panel? Let's give them a big hand because they've done a really good job with that. Okay, so let me ask you, what's on your mind right now? What are you thinking, if you had a few moments, which you do, to share with us, what is important and what does everybody here in this room need to know? Anybody?
Wow, that's kind of a loaded question. If you're gonna, well, let me ask you, how many of you have, are starting a team, or your team is maybe a year or two in the making? All right, excellent. The thing you have to understand is that when it comes to robotics, it has to be organic. When you start forcing what you want it to be, it becomes top heavy, it will crumble. You have to kind of let this develop out of, what are the kids into? What are their interests in? Because, like I said, push your interest on it, it's not going to work. You need to be patient. You have to understand that this is a process. It takes time. So I've talked to a few other teachers, and they said, well, I have no idea what's going on with robotics. I don't know this, I don't know that. Fine, that's good. Talk to people that do know stuff. Network. If you will find someone that knows more about robotics than you do, and when you start to know more about robotics than them, find somebody else that knows more about it than you do. Increase your knowledge, research. Just spend time, improving yourself, because when you improve yourself, you're going to improve your team. Your team will be better, they will be more motivated. You won't have to worry about, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Now you're like, well, I know what to do, and here's how we're going to do it. And they get attached to that, and they love it. And for me, that's what robotics is all about, is getting them to understand that it's not just something that you do after school, it's something that you are learning life skills, you're getting good knowledge skill sets, you're getting critical thinking pieces, you're developing logical thought processes. It encompasses so many different things, and that's kind of where I stand with robotics.
I think that you should not always do what you're doing because you've always done it. I think that you should always go out and keep your options open. For example, we had some meetings with the director of Greenville ISD, and she talked to us about VEX versus FIRST. Love FIRST, always done FIRST, but sometimes if your budget is not for FIRST and you only have a small amount of students that can go through FIRST, like have a $5,000 robot, why not look at a different type of robotics, for example VEX, and you can get more kids interested and more kids aware about robotics and go from a $5,000 competition to a $500 competition or a $50 competition. That way more kids can be involved in it. We've always done FIRST, always done FLL, and that's what our town of Texarkana, that's what we know. We're breaking new ground with this VEX, and we can, if you saw that the kids, it's not the product, it's the process. Just like with our Google and our Word, it's not a product, it's a process that we want to learn. So it doesn't matter if you go to Target and get the Gizbot, whatever. Just start with it. Kids are going to love it if you make it fun, of course. And then figure out how you can go from there. But I'm always looking for, I guess, because I'm always looking for something I can get all kids involved in, whether they do SPED or GT. What will you fit? I had one student, she did not want robotics, no part of it. So she designed all our t-shirts and did an amazing job designing t-shirts. And then she digitized them, just saying. So that was her robotics part. But anyway, sorry.
No, that's great. Any other thoughts on that?
But if you're looking from the administrative perspective too, when you try to find good people to help surround your students and your around the vision in which you've shared or created. You want a shared vision of where you want to be. And I think from our standpoint, we've had that expectation that we don't want to be status quo. We want to always be moving forward and not left behind, and being creative and challenging. And like we're talking about, keep on evolving. And so, from an administrative perspective on this, is to be able to be open, be able to listen, and be able to understand that there are other possibilities that are out there, and that to help our students grow and progress and make them better, because that's what we're trying to teach them, is to evolve into a changing world globally, that we want to be able to provide the resources, provide the support, and provide the experiences for them, whether it be a host school, to host competitions, to help mentor other schools, to help bring those people in, to help make it a joint effort. But I think the main thing is, from my point is to try to find, if there's the resources we're trying to find, then we go out and we try to find corporate sponsors, we try to find things to help do fundraising activities, what we have to do to make it work. So you can't just say, well, this costs too much, we can't do it. We're not going to do it. Well, we got to find a way. If it's important, you make it happen. And I think that's where we are, is that we try to make it happen in some way if we can.
Mr. Bear, how do you know it's important?
We make it know it's important because it's aligned to what our vision is. We want to be here. And how do we get to that point? What's our goal? We set our goals every year of where we want to be. And so at that point, it's the kids make it important. We get to them and say, hey, it's all about the kids. And the kids come to us, and we have our meetings, and we say, hey, this is what we want to do. And our teachers do the same thing. Then it's a shared vision of where we want to get there. And so how do we get to this point from A to B? And we find a way to get to A to B.
Very good. We have a question from one of our audience members. Yes, sir.
What can the robot help us with?
What can the robots?
Which robot would you?
Like any robots?
Robotics in general?
Yes, sir.
They can get you a college degree and a scholarship. I've seen a ton of kids go through our robotics program. No matter what school district I'm in, they're going to get the scholarship because there's not a lot of people that are interested in that right now. That's what I've seen.
What do you want to be when you grow up? I see you're already growing up, but what do you want to be when you finish high school?
Work on the oil field.
Work in the oil field, okay? You want to be an engineer? Do you want to be a skilled person who's got a lot more experience and you get more money? You want to make money, right?
Yes, sir.
That's obviously what everybody wants to do. So the level of what experience and skill level you have will get you a bigger, higher job in that industry. So if you want to work with drones and you want to work with technology, there's a lot of technologies in the oil business, oil and gas field. And those are things that robotics, engineering, all those things can help you grow, make a lot of money, and take care of all your girlfriends, right? Okay.
Ms. Ford, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I do. Robots are everywhere. When you say how can robots help us, they help us daily. Almost every corner you turn, there's something robotics going on. Think about Walmart. When you walk into Walmart, what happens?
Door opens up.
And then the air blows in your face, right? That's robotics. Think about what happens when you stop at a railroad track. Lights start flashing and this arm comes down. Robotics. That's a sensor that the train triggers so many, I guess, miles away. But robotics is everywhere. We all enjoy our technology. We enjoy our phones. We enjoy our games. we've seen that change over time.
25 years.
And our students' generation hasn't seen that change yet, but they will because it's always changing. And so, we went to having pagers in college so that my parents could get a hold of me in case of emergency. So now, we have our telephones, but you will see in your lifetime a huge change in robotics, and it will affect you daily.
Los Angeles has just gotten the bid for the Olympics, and I came from Los Angeles, so the traffic out there when I was back there 20 years ago was horrible, but it's even worse now. And they're saying by the time the Olympics will get there, which is 2025, something like that, they're looking at hover cars. You know, they're going to be Uber hover cars because they only have so much space on the land that's out there, so they will hover over, so there'll be 2 or 3 hovering. And it sounds like George Jetson's, going on right now, but that's really a possibility in our lifetime that's going to happen, just like the changes you've said from the time you've gone. And what they've seen, they haven't seen those drastic things, but those are all possibilities that are already in the works right now. And you're going to need those skills to make that happen. And that's why we've got to get these kids at younger ages, because that's what's going on in our world, and we've got to have them prepared so that they'll be ready.
And I just want to remind you one thing that's so important. When we, not him, but when we grew up, we wanted to buy the best that's going to last a lifetime. The best thing that's going to last a lifetime. You want to buy the best refrigerator. But kids now, it's all about consumables. I'm going to go buy a pay-as-you-go phone, and it's going to be gone tomorrow. If I lose it, so what? It's $20. No big deal. They're not about something that's going to last for 10 years, like my washing machine, and I'm going to put a new filter. It's all about new. So we have to kind of think about how are they thinking, and make sure that we're not just investing in this is the only way to do it. It's not the only way to do it. Let's find the cheapest way that's going to be a more consumable way to do it, so they can have that quick turnaround and change.
And more effective way to get things that we can do. Yes, ma'am, you had a comment?
Yeah, just changing gears a little bit. I came out of the pharmaceutical industry and studied molecular cell biology. And if you look smaller, like nanotechnology and stuff, they're making nanobots available now that can go in and repair DNA and repair cancer, fight cancer cells or fix certain diseases. So we're right there on the cusp of nanotechnology, bioinformatics, things like that. If I ever went back to school, that's what I would study.
As a matter of fact, my daughter, she's a junior, and she made a 34 on her ACT. I'm so proud of her. But she's very interested in biomechanics and nanotechnology, and looking at these things and how technology can impact your health. And none of us is getting any younger. So as we get older, our healthcare, is just, it goes all south, guys. I'll tell you. I hate to say that.
Well, even the 3D printers, they used to you'd have to get somebody to design and do that, and then you'd have to send it out to somebody, and they were waiting for those parts. Now it's just, we draw it, we put it in there, and the part, one of the things that I saw was a little girl that needed a prosthetic leg, and they didn't make them that small because she was just too tiny. But with the 3D printer, they were able to do that, and they could do it to scale. And if it broke off, they didn't have to wait 3 weeks for the part to be made in a manufacturer. Just went to the 3D printer and they could put it back in.
And similarly, my mom had x-rays here done recently. In the old days, they would have to wait to develop the film, send it off to Little Rock by carrier. They would overnight it, and then they'd overnight it back with the results. Now it's done electronically, and so they can see. And they have a whole team of specialists just reading x-rays, the doctors that do in consultation. So it's just enormous amount of things that you can do. The young people in here and with these opportunities, they are just growing exponentially. Mr. Henderson, I know you're broadcasting this all over. What do you think that your audience is interested in, and what kind of questions might they have?
At this point, in fact, I had just tweeted that out a second ago. I hadn't heard anything back yet from the folks that are listening, but I know from the conversations that we have with educators, the podcast that I co-host, we focus on education technology primarily. A lot of discussion lately about coding and robotics, and we're talking about all the things that change, and you're talking about being in the pharmaceutical industry. Many of the pharmacies you go into now, you're asking about, what do robots do? Many of the pharmacies you go into now, the pharmacist doesn't actually, count out the pills and stuff anymore. That's all handled by a robot in that pharmacy that they plug in whatever your prescription is, and it goes and it figures out all the stuff. And so you have to have folks who first of all understand how the programming works, but you also have the folks who developed it in the first place. You have the folks who troubleshoot it and work on it. Yes. Then you have the folks who update it because things change. So I mean, as you guys have said, robotics is a part of everything we do, everywhere we go. We don't necessarily think of it in those terms, but I mean, it is. It's in almost everything we do, and eventually will be in everything we do. I had a conversation. We were just in San Antonio, and we just had a conversation with a group whose students just won. Well, they just got back now, I guess, but they had won a contest. It's called the Cubes in Space. I don't know if you've heard of this or not, but essentially NASA has a thing where they have a 2-inch cube, and your experiment has to fit in that cube, and they take it to space. Wow. And so there's this young girl, and I can't remember what condition she has, but she has a problem with her heart. And so she and the school worked with a local biotech company to develop a pacemaker that fit inside the 2-inch cube. And so you talk about robotics, they're going to have, and heck, coding and computer science, the whole 9 yards. So they sent this pacemaker up to space, brought it back, did all kinds of testing, and essentially what they discovered was, because one of the issues is that you're not allowed to go into space if you have a pacemaker, because the general consensus is that the pacemaker is going to wig out, right? So what this showed was that actually through all of that, this tiny little pacemaker essentially treated the situation as if the person was going under some strenuous exercise. It adjusted accordingly and was able to function normally. So you're going to have robots that are going to help put those into place. You have the people who are coding it, developing it, designing it. So all the things you guys are learning right now have implications you don't even know exist at this point. I mean, it's amazing.
I just kind of want to address the gentleman's question real quick. You said you wanted to work in the oil field. I've got a cousin that works in the oil field. He actually has a captain of an oil ship or something now. I'm not sure what he does, but I know he's captain's on a ship out there that does this stuff. I'm friends with a petroleum engineer. Both of them told me that in the next 10 years, robots will be in place. I mean, it has to be. Throw some numbers at you. They said, I think by 2025, one in 5 jobs will require automation. That scares a lot of people. In the tech industry and in the industrial industry, kind of what you want to get into, 1 in 3. It's because some of these jobs are incredibly dangerous, and so they need automation to go in there. Now, you may say, "Oh, I don't necessarily like robotics." That's fine, but you can develop skill sets that when you do get out there and you are working alongside a robot or some automated device or machine, you have skills that can work on that. You are making yourself a little bit more indispensable because now you are improving yourself. One of my professors, my coding professor, he actually helped write some of the code for the first surgery machine that was actually done online. They had a dedicated internet line, and he wrote some of the code that was basically 2 pages long. There was one little part that he had to do for a guy in, I think it was a doctor in Southeast Asia, was actually performing surgery on this patient in Africa. He got to work on that.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Even we're in the oil field, people say that that's not hard work. It is hard work, and it's dangerous work. So develop some skill sets, because I keep up a lot of tech, and they say that robotics is going to do for the job industry what the internet did for communications.
Yeah, I have one more thing to add, but if y'all ever watch Impossible Engineering on the Tesla automation plant, that they're building another one, I think in Nevada, that's going to be the biggest footprint on the planet.
The
was just seeing where, Mercedes and, Volkswagen and some of the others, they're scared to death of Tesla.
Yeah.
They are scared because what they're doing there is flipping everything around. We may no longer have vehicles like we've had in the
Yeah,
past.
like Henry Ford's,
Revolutionized with the
it's being
conveyor line.
revolutionized again as we speak, you know.
It really is.
Don't get scared of this because you're always gonna have a niece, nephew, grandchild, son, daughter that's gonna know more than you. Just hand it over to them and let them do it, okay? It's okay. They need to teach you too, right? Yeah? You're always gonna know.
Well, any other questions from our group out here? Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. Okay, yes, sir.
I'm completely new to robotics. We're doing a team this year. And thanks to you, Shannon, we're doing this EDR based on your recommendation to me. But I know nothing about it, so we're literally in there most days YouTubing how to do stuff.
Really?
Yeah. Because I don't know what trainings are out there that can help me as a teacher learn to do more of that. I mean, I've been talking to you, Mark, occasionally just asking what you're doing. Of course, we hadn't gotten a whole lot of details. Are there any trainings out there for robotics teachers? And if so, where do I go to look other than Google? Because that's the only place I know to do anything right now.
In your classroom. Give them a problem and they'll solve it. They'll figure it out.
And that's what I've been doing is telling them, okay, here's a task I want you to accomplish with this robot. Design something to do it, and then they're like, okay, well, how do I make this robot do this? On YouTube. Let's figure it out. Google it, YouTube, and that's basically what we've been doing a lot of times in our class stuff.
When we're starting with our kindergarten, with what I would normally start with 3rd grade, they don't know they can do it. I don't tell them they can't. I just say, this is how you do it. Well, let's go do it. And then if you push it down, then the kids that are coming up, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, you know, these kids are so amazing because they started in kindergarten and they've learned all these different types and processes all the way up. So when they're in high school, they're like, wow, winner, winner, chicken dinner, because we're gonna have every skill that there is available.
And to kind of go along with what she's saying is that, as I said earlier, let it be organic. I mean, I'm not even half as smart as the kids that I brought with me. When I was their age, I was even further along. I'll admit it, but it's got to be organic. You know, one thing I will say is that when you're in robotics or designing all this, just with keeping an engineering notebook, I'm keeping a notebook to myself on just things that I've learned. That would be good too because there's not really any standard way to do this yet. So we may come up with a process that can basically set the groundwork for building a robotics program across the board. So just keep an open mind.
We had Legos and I found somebody's curriculum online, and that's what we've done since August. And I present them problems, and there's been times they can verify that I didn't know how to do it. We worked together, and then I did it one way, and then they found a shortcut. And I was like, hey, how'd you do that? Just be open, like, let's figure it out. And now we're switching to the VEX thing, so we've kind of finished that curriculum. How are we going to build this? I don't know how you want to build it. What do you think of this? It doesn't matter what I think. How do you want to adapt your robot to go? But I guess my question past that would be, they're all in 8th grade. When they're done, I'm doing it during a remediation class that I have. And then even the principal and all teachers, their critical thinking skills have gotten better, their logic, their teamwork, their enthusiasm towards education is better. Where do I go with them now? Like, I have high school students that come into my other classes and they see the robots and they're like, why can't we do that? That's a good question. Let me figure out what I'm doing with them and let's see where we can go. In like 8th grade, like the peak of the IQ, and then you should go with what you have, or
That's not necessarily
Isn't
true
that what I was-
because there are 9 languages that the VEX IQ will allow you to program from. So you can use some high school languaging all the way to LabVIEW on those smaller, simple. You don't have to build a robot out of it. It could be anything. It could be a catapult if you want to shoot marshmallows or whatever.
I love that. Shoot marshmallows, exactly.
But they can use our small little, and we can use theirs.
said you're not sure, or you mean you don't know where to go, like academically, or?
Yeah, I don't know, curriculum wise, do I just stay where I'm at and expand, or do I need?
Well, I'll tell you something, just personal experience I had this summer, is that, a student graduated this past year, and I met with her dad because he had an idea that he wanted us to look into. Whenever we sit down and talked about it, I was like, okay, that's a little weird, but, hey, let's do it, let's see what we can come up with. Reach out to the community. If the community knows that you're doing something like this, they'll be like, hey, have you thought about doing this? Or hey, can you do this? You know, he said, be open-minded about it, because, yeah, the curriculum's there. You can use the curriculum to build this stuff. So just find something that scares you and then go after it.
And somebody had to write that curriculum for you to use, so be open to that too.
Yeah.
Invent it.
Yeah.
Make it up as you go along.
I found in my situation, when you tell a child, you know, when they create something, it's just a light that goes off because they've done it. You haven't told them what to do. They get to choose what they do, and then they build on that. And then I challenge mine a little bit further. I say, okay, you've got this done. What else can you make it do that might be a little bit harder? And then they start thinking, the problem solving, and everything goes on. But it's really, really, in my situation, it's that light that you see when, you mean we can do anything we want with it? Yeah, sure, but make it, you know, you've done it this way, okay, now you gotta do a little bit harder. So it challenges them and motivates them to go a little bit further.
Ms. Allison, that's the, what I call transferability, you know, of the child, is that if they can learn something in this area and be able to transfer it over here, something that's similar yet different, that is really teaching them to think and to learn and to be able to problem solve. Remember when we had the oil spill in the Gulf, was it about 5 years ago or so, and it was just spewing oil? I remember seeing on CNN, it was a heart surgeon, and he said, you know, this kind of reminds me of a ruptured aorta. And he suggested that they go in and they kind of plug it in, and basically that's what they ended up doing on that kind of way. But I love it that a surgeon was giving some input on how to address this unfortunate occurrence that was happening. So, okay, we're down to about 3 minutes left. It's a Christmas season, so Ms. Brown, we're gonna start with you. What is your Christmas wish for your students here in 30 seconds or less? Go.
To never lose their dreams, to keep being creative and keep doing what they're doing, and not to give up.
Very nice. Thank you. Ms. Kirkland.
I wanted a big, huge budget from Santa, so I could get everybody everything I ever wanted to get, so we could all do the same stuff at the same time. And
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Love it.
Yes.
Mr. Aaron.
I just want my students to understand that the limitations that they see are self-imposed. You know, you do way more than you think you can.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Mr. Bailey?
And I just want to echo what they've said, but basically to keep expanding, keep growing, never staying still, we have an entrepreneurship club, a think tank. I want them to keep creating, keep thinking about the future, and keep growing and I want to help support them as we do that.
Thank you very much. Well said. And my gift is the gift of leadership that I hope that every one of us, doesn't matter if you're a superintendent, if you're a principal, if you're a teacher, a support personnel, if you're a student, everybody is empowered to lead. And no matter what your role is, if you're a parent, anything, we need you out there, we need your voice, articulate what's important to you, and let's work together and get things done, because that's the way things happen. So let's give it up for this panel. They did a tremendous